Hi, this is Ike from Groovy Entertainment. Today we got another book to read for you. Today's book is Elf Displaces a Zoo for 1989. So let's get started. One sunny day, Elf found himself all alone in the backyard of the Tanner house. The rest of the family had gone on a picnic with friends. It was up to Elf to amuse himself at home for the day. The Tanner had only been gone a little while, but Alf already was bored. He had already done all the fun things, like look for four-leaf clovers, picked up big rocks to see the ants and worm underneath, and hung upside down from a tree limb until all the blood rushed to his head. Alf had even counted all the pickets in the picket fence 3 times. I had never been so bored in my entire life, he thought to himself. I wish something exciting would happen to make this time go by faster. Anything. Suddenly, Alf heard a strange noise coming from the bushes. When he crawled through the branches to investigate, he could hardly believe his eyes. There, coming through a hole in the fence, was an anteater. Before Alf could stand up to move out of the way, the frightened anteater leaped over the bushes. It scampered across the yard toward the Tanner house. Just as the anteater vanished into the cellar window of the house, 2 men jumped over the fence and dropped a big net over Alf's head. They were zoo janitors who had accidentally released Otto the anteater from his cage at the zoo. The men was out searching the neighborhood for Otto when they saw Elf. After all, Elf did look a little like Otto, especially when he was all on fours. Hey, yo, wait, Elf started to yell, but then he remembered that Anteater can't talk. If he said anything, the men might suspect the truth. They accidentally captured an alien from space. Alf bit his tongue and allowed himself to be catered off to the zoo. This is just great, thought Alf to himself, as he bumped along in the back of the zoo van. Excitement I wanted, but this game of catch the furball they can keep. At the zoo, Alf was tossed into the anteater cage, but back home, yeah, go, Otto, said one of the men as the big door on the cage slammed shut. Yeah, and home sweet home it isn't, muttered Alf to himself. I gotta get out of here fast. It's almost lunchtime. The janitor was so relieved to have Otto back in his cage that they fed him his favorite meal, live ants. Alf had to eat something of the bug so the men wouldn't get suspicious. He spit the ant out as soon as the janitor left. Phooey, what miserable little morsels, mumbled Alf under his breath. But a nice juicy cat would taste good right now. Alf's stomach was just starting to make hungry noises when he looked up and noticed Esmeralda, the female anteater who shared Otto's cage. She took one look at the furry alien and forgot all about her sweetheart. Otto, it was love at first sight. Chasing around, chased around and around the cage by a lovesick Esmeralda, Alf soon lost his appetite. Back, you hairy hussy. Aylin, Elf hissed at her. I'm already taken. I got 3 wives, 40 kids, and never picked the cat fur from between my teeth after meal, he lied. But Esmeralda continued to make eyes at him. Suddenly, he understood why Otto had escaped. Meanwhile, the tanner arrived home to find Elf missing. But while searching for Elf in the basement, Brian discovered Otto. Hey, this guy look almost like Elf. Are you Elf cousin? He asked Otto as he peeled at the ammo in the dim light of the basement. Something about this creature was very different from Elf, but Brian wasn't quite sure what it was. When Otto moved into brighter light, Brian could see what the difference was. This wasn't Elf. This wasn't one of Elf's relationship, or no relative. This was this little feather with an anteater. Brian coaxed the cold, hungry anteater upstairs with a box of chocolate-covered raisins. Otto ate them, but they wasn't good. They wasn't as good as the plain bugs he was fed at the zoo. In fact, the more Otto thought about it, nothing about this place was good at the zoo. He even missed Everardo a little bit. Later, the tanner neighbor Travis came over to ask why the truck from the zoo had been parked in front of their house early that day. The family quickly put 2 and 2 together. They figured out what must have happened to Elf. The tanner piled into the family station wagon with Otto and headed for the zoo. By the time the tanner arrived at the zoo, it was almost closing time. They found Elf in the anteater cage, which was surrounded by a group of not-so-nice zoo visitors who were laughing at him and pelted him with peanuts. Spend one day in here being chased by a furry, flat-footed Fuzzy and see what you look like, said Elf under his breath to a man who had been jutting at him, pointing at his rampant appearance. Just then, Elf looked away to the other side of the crowd, and who did he see trying to push their way to the front but the tanners. Elf was so happy to see his family that he gave Eduardo a big hug. Willie slipped around to the back of the cage. In the meantime, Caitlin and Brian distracted the zoo attendant. Willie opened the cage door to set Elf free and to return Otto to his rightful place. As Elf climbed into the empty backpack, he looked back to wave goodbye to Alvarado, but the fickle anteater annoyed him. She was already busy making eyes at her beloved Otto, who was making up for lost time by eating every ant in sight. Goodbye, you two Timmer tarts, yelled Elf. And watch out, Otto. She's been on the track all day. Ha, poor sucker. I hope he's in the mood for a good run. With that Esmeralda starting to chase Otto madly around the cave. Well, Elf, said Willie. He started the car. Looked like you had an exciting day after all. Yeah, right, but it taught me one thing, Elf replied. I'll take home and board any day. That place is a zoo. So that was Elf. This place is a zoo from 1989. So if you like, subscribe, share, and comment, and have a groovy day. We have another video coming out real soon.